Class, class 7, 8 class English medium, subject social, lesson number 5, forest, part 2, tribal people. Tribal people. It is difficult to imagine forest in our country without the people who live in them and use them. Forests provide the critical reasons for the very poor in our state to make a living. In North Coastal region, for example, 20% of people who use the forest collected had loaded of fuel wood and carry them in market for sale. On the other hand, in Rayalaseema districts, most people depend upon the forest for grazing sheep and goats. They are using the forest for sheep and goats to graze there, and in Rayalaseema district, most of the people are grazing sheep and goats. In coastal region, about 50% of people depend upon some collection of forest produces. You would have made a long list of forest produces people collect, but the full list is much longer with about more than 60 items from the forest. Forest నుంచి మనకి 60% అంటే 60 ఐటమ్స్ మనం ఫారెస్ట్ నుంచి పొందవచ్చు అన్నమాట. Of the people who depend upon forest for their livelihood, the tribal people are the most important. For the thousands years, tribal people have lived in the forest, protected them, and earned their livelihood from them. You have read about them in the earlier classes. Even today, 60% of tribal people in our state live in forest. How do the tribal people use the forest? How do the tribal people use the forest? You may remember how the Kondareddy of Kunavaram Hills use the forest around them for Kodu cultivation, collection of forest produces like food items, fruits, tubers and dumpal. Items for sale like beedi leaves, medicinal plants, bamboo, tamarind. These are the products coming from the forest. They are selling in the markets. Unlike in the plain villages, tribal people do not have the notice of private property in land, and all clan members use the forest with the consent of the village elders. Each family has customary right over the land they cultivate and will shift to in the coming year. Since the Kodu keeps shifting every few years, there is no fixed record of ownership. They are using the Kodu cultivation. It is one kind of cultivation, that is, some people are gathering and cleaning that forest and cutting down and preparing for cultivation. Some years they are cultivate there, and then after some years, 3 or 4 years, they are going to another place and they cultivate there. When they are going, before that they are planting a new plants there and went out. That is called a Kodu. Okay. During the last 200 years after the establishment of British rule in our country, the tribal people gradually lost their control and rights over the forest. Since then, forests are rapidly cut down. This happened in two ways. Firstly, there was a demand for wood for various purposes like building railways, ships, factories, mines, houses, furniture, etc. They are using the wood that for factories, mines, next railways, then houses, furniture, like this, the wood of the coming from the forest. Okay. Similarly, many industries like paper industry, they, as you have read in class 7, need large quantity of pulp wood. As a result of these purposes, large tracts of forest were cutting down and wood sold there. In many areas, forests were cut down to create plantation of tea, coffee or rubber, and later they quit growing trees like eucalyptus and bamboo. When they are cutting the plants from the forest, they are keeping new plants of early growing trees like eucalyptus and bamboo. Okay. Secondly, the British government wanted to control the filling of forest in such a way that that it could benefit most from it and also help protecting the remaining forest. They made laws in 1864 and 1878 to create the forest department, which was given control over the forest. They are making a forest department to control over the forest. The laws restricted the traditional and customary rights of the tribal and forest users by classifying forest as reserved and protected. Reserved forests and protected forests అని 2 types వాళ్ళు classify చేశారు. Reserved forests are forests in which no one could enter. ఈ రిజర్వ్ ఫారెస్ట్లో ఎవరు కూడా వెళ్ళడానికి అనుమతి ఉండదన్నమాట. ప్రొటెక్టెడ్ ఫారెస్ట్ కుడ్ యూజ్ బై ద పీపుల్. ఈ ప్రొటెక్టెడ్ ఫారెస్ట్ మాత్రం పీపులే యూజ్ చేసుకున్నారు. అదైనా ఎలాగా? దే కుడ్ టేక్ హెడ్ లాడ్స్, అంటే ఆ ఫారెస్ట్ చుట్టుపక్కల ఉన్నటువంటి వాళ్ళ హెడ్ లాడ్స్ అంటారు, ఆఫ్ వుడ్ అండ్ స్మాల్ ఫారెస్ట్ ప్రొడ్యూసెస్ for their own use and could graze their cattle, but here too there were many restrictions over cutting trees, grazing more than the limit set of forest department. Forest department నుంచి కంపల్సరీగా వాళ్ళు రిజిస్ట్రేషన్ చేసుకొని వాళ్ళు చేసుకోవడం జరుగుతుందన్నమాట. ఓకే, అలాగైతే నెక్స్ట్ as we know, a very large number of people lived in those forests and depended upon. Okay. By one stroke, the tribal people were rendered homeless in their own homes. To add to this, the government was eager to hand over the land to zamindars and cultivators from other areas so that they could settle down, the cultivate and lands for pay revenue to the government. They had to pay some money as a revenue to the government. They evicted tribal people had to work for these landlords now. On the lands which the tribal people were allowed to cultivate, they had to pay very high revenue. Often they had to borrow money from the money lenders and to pay this amount. They have to borrow from the money lenders to pay the revenue to the government. In the end, they had to sell off their lands for the money lenders. పాపం వడ్డీలు ఎక్కువైపోయి ఏం చేసేవారంటే మనీ లెండర్స్కి వాటిని సేవ్ చేసేసేవారు. Thus, they gained, lost whatever land they had. అలాగా వాళ్ళ ల్యాండ్స్ అన్నీ కూడా ల్యాండ్ లార్డ్స్కి లేకపోతే మనీ లెండర్స్కి వెళ్ళిపోవడం జరిగింది. ద ఫారెస్ట్ డిపార్ట్మెంట్ విచ్ వాజ్ ఎస్టాబ్లిష్డ్ ఇన్ దిస్ పీరియడ్ హ్యాడ్ టు టాస్క్ ఆఫ్ ప్రొటెక్టింగ్ ద ఫారెస్ట్ అండ్ ప్లాంటింగ్ న్యూ ట్రీస్. It also had the responsibility of the managing the harvesting of the forest. that is felling mature old trees and selling them to earn money for the department. They are cutting the old trees, cutting down and selling in the market, and they are planting a new plants instead of that place. They exploited the hapless tribal people, cheated them and constantly harassed them. In the name of forest conservation, large-scale evictings occurred in the 1920s and mopping operations continued till 1940. This created an atmosphere of unending insecurity for the tribal people. ఇది వాళ్ళకి ఇన్సెక్యూరిటీగా ఉండేదన్నమాట. ఏ రోజున ఎవరు వస్తారో, ఏ మోడల్ నుంచి ఎవరు వస్తారో, ఏది అంటారో, గవర్నమెంట్ ఎలా ఉంటుందో ఏంటి అని చెప్పేసి చాలా ట్రబుల్గా ఉండేదన్నమాట. ద ట్రైబల్ పీపుల్ ఫాట్ అగైనెస్ట్ దిస్ ఫ్రమ్ వెరీ బిగినింగ్. ఇన్ సమ్ రీజన్స్ లైక్ ద నార్త్ ఈస్ట్ they were able to win some protecting for the government. At the time of independence, our national leaders were debating whatever it was better for the tribal people to be left alone to lead their traditional lives in the forest, or should they be made to adopt settled agriculture, modern education and industrial work. This is the way they are giving the lands to the tribal people by the government. Okay children, I am giving some assignment for you. What is a Podu cultivation? What is a Podu cultivation? What are the two types of forest? Two types of forest are reserve forest, protected forest. Okay children, you have to write and send to me.